I mean, that is a very powerful story, and it's a story of many Black Americans. The egregious system that has deprived us of our right to vote existed back then and still exists today. But that is Reverend Otis Moss's story and his motivation for voting. And I appreciate Oprah for sharing that story, but I also want to uplift the fact that um, sort of these boilerplate stories and these guilt tripping people into voting is not necessarily, I believe, the way that we are really going to increase civic engagement in our communities. We have to collectively find what motivates us. What is the story of Amanda King in Cleveland and why she wants to vote? That might not be the story of Reverend Otis Moss's father. And so what we need to do is have real and honest conversations about what is motivating us to vote and speak to each other in ways that encourage us to take that step to go to the polls and vote, but to also understand that voting is not a panacea for every single social justice issue in the world, that it is a means to an end, but it is not the only way to solve our social problems. And so I think when it goes back to the topic of motivation, when I was conceptualizing this project, I thought about the importance of representation at this moment and the importance of seeing a leader that you believed in the past to address the contemporary moment and the contemporary urgency. And I will say, which is a little bit off topic, when we were giving away the yard signs and when we were presenting this idea to some of the partners at Cleveland Votes, there was so much excitement around seeing these figures now and the stories that folks told about when they knew Stephanie Tubbs Jones and Carl Stokes and Otis Moss really made them feel good. And in resistance, we have to have joy. In resistance, we have to have faith, we have to have pride, and we have to have hope as well. And so I think that in our DNA is a project that is uniquely situated to evoke and invoke all of those things. Okay, so the stakes. I mean, this was a high stakes year, and what was at stake for democracy? What was at stake for the Black struggle movement? What was at stake for the health of our country? I think was unprecedented this year, and I want to share. You know, I want to give kudos to Stacey Abrams in Georgia for mobilizing a team of organizers who managed to register over 800,000 folks to vote in a runoff election. That is profound faith. That is profound resistance, because many of those voters, when she was running for governor, had been deprived the right to vote. And instead of taking it as a loss, Stacey Abrams saw it as an opportunity for victory. And she went out and she registered those folks. And it did really kind of change the landscape of our democracy. And I think that that's one of the many stories of people who thought about victory different this year. And it's a story of how you can simultaneously engage in resistance and still participate in the democratic process. I don't think that they're antithetical to each other. And Stacey Abrams and her team of organizers certainly show that with what they did in Georgia. But I want to play a clip of young Stacey, because leaders aren't just born like, she didn't just pop up and become Stacey Abrams and have these viewpoints and ideologies. It was in her since she was a young girl. And this is her speaking at a rally. And I just want you to hear what her motivation is. And I believe that that young Stacey is still, you know, that young Stacey is in Stacey Abrams' organizing strategy today. So let me play this.
Today, I come to you as a young person, as a young woman, as a young Black woman, to ask you to use us, use the young people of the United States of America to pave a road that will last forever, pave a road that will let us become the foot soldiers, let us not have to do this again for our children. We ask you to let us come forth with you, not behind you, not in front of you, but together on that road to jobs, justice, and peace.
Yes, so jobs, justice, and peace were all at stake in Georgia, but also in Cleveland. Issue 68.
Today.
Issue 68 was on the ballot this year, and thankfully it passed, but issue 68 was really about ensuring educational freedom for our young people, about investing in education, high quality education, ensuring that we could have quality Cleveland schools where teachers are paid their worth, where we could continue to increase our graduation rate and our performances. And it seems like something that many people who are just or who believe in justice would agree with, that would vote for. But you know, as artists and organizers, we are often in conversation with people who are telling us the truth and the real about situations. And my partner in Shooting Without Bullets, co-leader and impact director, Kelsey Carter, spoke with some folks from a teachers union who were petrified because the opposition was sending out fake propaganda that was telling people false truths about issue 68, that we're saying to people that issue 68 is robbing you of your hard-earned money, that issue 68 is going to leave you and your communities broke, instead of telling them the truth about how it would invest in their children. And I say this to say that, you know, for good, people are Shooting Without Bullets and a lot of other cultural organizers are using our art and our creativity for good. But on the opposite side of that is definitely people who are using visual language, who are using messaging and propaganda for bad. And so we must provide counter narratives through artistic and creative expression to transform society, but also to protect our democracy and to preserve our communities. And so that is an example of why In Our DNA is so crucial, because there's always going to be messaging out there that seeks to oppress, that seeks to take away from, that puts priority in profit over people. And so In Our DNA is that public art project that brings humanity into focus and that also fuels people power. In Our DNA is a multi-site, multi-phase public art campaign. We started with civics in mind, but are actively conceptualizing other iterations and seeking future sites for our work. And as was just mentioned in the introduction, parts of In Our DNA will be on Case's campus, but we hope that we can bring In Our DNA to communities across Cleveland. And so if you have any ideas for In Our DNA, figures that you would like to see, or slogans that you would like us to share, please drop them in the chat, because we are actively researching this, and you never know, maybe you'll see one of your expressions up there. So that is my presentation. I thank you for listening. If you do have ideas, you can visit agency at Shooting Without Bullets. You can email agency@shootingwithoutbullets.org, and we'll we'll get back to you. But if you also just want to learn more about our organization and how you can contribute to our movement, visit shootingwithoutbullets.org. Thank you.
Amanda, we'll begin the question and answer period now. There's a question for you that I put in the chat for you. Do you see that? If you'll read it out loud.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so why do people give words like resistance, feminist, movement a negative connotation? Because they're afraid of it. Because they want to silence, those viewpoints. They don't want that ideology to be amplified, because in putting it down and making it negative, it furthers their agenda, which is to maintain the status quo. And so we grow up and say, I don't want to be a feminist because I don't want to seem like I hate men, when that's not really what feminism is about at all. Or I don't want to say I'm a part of a resistance because I don't want people to think that I don't like white people, or I don't like non-Black people. Well, that's not what resistance is about. Resistance is about loving yourself and loving Black people enough that you would stand up to people in power to say that I matter and I'm going to fight for it. So I just think that it's really a tool and a tactic of oppression, which is to kill progressive ideas. So thank you for that question. Sure. So working with young people in Shooting Without Bullets is really a joy. It's a joy to be able to work every day with young creative minds. I cannot tell you how refreshing it is to listen to their passions and their perspectives, and to see them actively pursuing justice and victory for themselves. And they also have to have an incredible amount of faith to wake up in Cleveland, where there is a child poverty rate of 50.5%, to live in some of the neighborhoods I lived in where literally a grocery store just popped up in their neighborhood, the first grocery store ever in the 20 years since they've been living. There's egregious conditions here in Cleveland, Ohio. We're the poorest major city. And the fact that young people every day say, I am going to take control of my city, of my livelihood and well-being by engaging in creative resistance through Shooting Without Bullets, is really a testament that we can all do it. But how, I guess if you want to know more about how Shooting Without Bullets works, we have our artist collective, which is composed of Black and Brown youth artists ages 18 through 21, who are creating high quality multimedia artworks that are social justice themed. And those artworks can be translated into campaigns like In Our DNA, or collections like our capsule with exhibition, or we've had dozens and dozens of photographic exhibitions and installations across Cleveland. But we also teach mini courses for younger students who are interested in social justice and art, but maybe aren't so interested in the creative economy or arts ecosystem at the moment, who really just want to further their artistic development and creative expression. And what we do is we introduce them to a medium like photography or design, and then they use that tool to directly address a social justice issue. And their creative output is both a response to and a solution to. So in 2018, we had a public art mini course for girls in Buckeye. And the result of that and the mini course addressed gender and racial disparities in the arts. And then the result of that mini course was that they created a bus shelter that would house artworks of women of color who had been excluded from institutions, and allow that work to be seen out in the public space so that anybody in the world could see the work, could be moved by the work, to create an alternative space where folks could view it, but also to protect, to keep those people who were taking the bus protected and within a shelter that also inspired them and that gave them energy throughout their day to move forward as well. So that's the high level of conceptualization that the young people in Shooting Without Bullets are thinking about and processing with, and also a high level of creative output. And that is why it is important that we work with justice-minded creatives as well, because through that experimentation and collaboration process, our young people are truly able to understand how creative output works and to see the fruit of their labor with all of the things that we are constantly releasing.
Amanda, Shannon French has asked a question that directly relates to that. She said, it can feel like big corporations have all the power to control what people see and respond to. How do we resist such loud outside voices from dominating every narrative, even in the arts?
Yeah, so I think I think that it's a long road ahead, right? Like, it's not easy to drown out those with the most resources and the loudest mouths and the biggest platforms. But again, it's not, one person is not going to change the course of our country. One event isn't going to do that. It's really constant and collective organizing and activating and resisting that is going to do that. And so each and every one of us have to dedicate ourselves to a life of resistance, to a life of standing up against, to a life of drowning out that noise, that oppressive noise from these institutions and corporations who want to maintain the status quo. But I also think that Black and brown folks have traditionally moved social movement in society forward, but are oftentimes the folks that are offered the crumbs at the table, who cannot sustain their work because there isn't enough resources. And so even if we invested in the Black and brown organizations in Cleveland right now who are doing this resistance work to the point where we could sustain our ecosystems and our organizations and our communities, a lot of shifts would happen. But until we have the resources that we need to grow our movements, we cannot shift everybody else's movement forward too. Okay. Sorry, I don't know which question to take. So how do the arts heal young people and communities? So a function of art is healing. So, the exhibition collection that I talked to you about, we have a Breathing, Fighting, Healing t-shirt. And we put breathing, fighting, and healing together for a reason. Healing is one part of that. We also have to fight. We have to fight for our breath, right? We have to fight for life. And so, yes, we art making is a cathartic process. Art making by the nature of it, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel empowered. You're going to feel healed. But I also know that we are very intentional about allowing our young people the space to be enraged and to translate that rage into something that is meaningful, into something that furthers the movement. And so while we want healing to be the ultimate goal, we also understand that there needs to be some frustration and anger with right now. And we invite that into the creative process and allow young people to direct that into something that can be solution-based. And I think that a lot of arts organizations around Cleveland and across the country are so interested in young Black and brown people healing that they get distracted from the fact that they're still fighting. And so, you know, you have to support their fight in order for them to heal. You just can't force healing down their throats all the time, because that might not be where they are at the moment. But investing in their artistic practices, paying them stipends, creating culturally relevant curriculums and opportunities to create and make art is a part of that healing process.
Amanda, Dr. Faye Gary, who's the director of the Provost Scholars, one of our co-sponsors this afternoon, asked a question that also focuses on this idea of engaging students. She thanks you for a clear presentation and says, we must find a way to re-engage students in the culture of learning. What are some suggestions? The virus has interrupted so many aspects of our lives, but education and learning is important. Students are not in schools nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the pandemic also changed how Shooting Without Bullets delivered your programs as well. Will you talk a little bit about those two things?
Yes. So I think before we re-engage, we really have to authentically engage. And so many young people feel like school is an obligation because we're not teaching culturally relevant stuff. We're not talking about what is of the moment, what is directly impacting their lives. It's like they go to school for however long it is, either in person or virtually. And it's a curriculum that's based on, you know, can you comprehend this archaic book or way of problem solving that doesn't necessarily feel adjacent to their everyday life outside of school. And I love education and I love learning all types of things, but it was truly, I had to come to learn that. Like, I think that education kind of set the groundwork, but it was through my friends circle. It was through going to arts and cultural institutions. It was through reading my own book and books and going to the library where I really was ignited by education. I don't think I got that really in a formal education process. And so we need to figure out what ignites and motivates our young people and bring that into the classroom. And create opportunities for exposure so that young people can choose what they want to be and what type of lives they want to pursue in adulthood. So many people told me that art was not a viable career. And in Shooting Without Bullets, we say that art is a viable career, but I'm not just going to hand you a camera and say, go shoot. I'm going to say, I'm negotiating this agreement with this gallery so that you can show your work and sell it and see that you can make it as a photographer. There has to be some active mobilizing and seeking mobility for young people, especially if you're going to teach them art. They need to be able to translate that into a skill that gives them economic mobility and social mobility as well.
We have time probably for one more question, and we have one from an attendee who asked, how does one get involved as a young person? And also, are you interested, as Shooting Without Bullets, are you interested in other partners?
Mm-hmm. So for our mini courses, we will put out applications on Shooting Without Bullets website, but also in community centers and through partner organizations. We definitely make our application process easy and accessible for young people. For our artist collective, it is invite only. They go through one of our mini courses and then are invited to be a part of the artist collective because of their dedication, their leadership, and their interest in furthering their artistic practices. We are always open to partnership and collaboration. I think particularly if anybody knows how to get a project like In Our DNA out into public space, that would really help Shooting Without Bullets greatly. But if you ever just want to know what's going on with Shooting Without Bullets, or if you have an opportunity, but you're not sure whether Shooting Without Bullets would be interested or it's the right fit, you can always email us and we'll definitely try to get back to you as, you know, in a timely manner and fashion. But of course, we are amplifying messages in our community, which means we're a community organization. We want to collaborate with folks in our community. And if you believe that there's a good collaboration, we're all ears. Okay. Well, thank you all for allowing me this platform to share about what Shooting Without Bullets is currently working on. Like I said, you can visit clevelanddna.com to learn more about. Please read the bios of Stephanie Tubbs-Jones, Otis Moss, and Carl Stokes. They're quite wonderful and inspiring. Learn about our mobilizing partners and the creative minds behind our project.
Thank you, Amanda. Jalicia, will you have our final word?
On behalf of the Provost Scholars Program and all of the sponsors, we would like to thank you, Amanda, for coming to talk to us about Shooting Without Bullets.
Thank you.